So, welcome to yet another Wisdom Talk, our 15th this time. And we are live here once again to explore wisdom, to explore some perspectives from people who have an applied and lived understanding of the idea of wisdom. And today I'm very happy to welcome Ujwal Thakar with us. Hello,
Hi,
Ujwal. Welcome and thank you for receiving this invitation.
my
So,
pleasure.
So most of our audience, Ujwal, is from the social sector, and I would kind of more or less anybody who's in the social space would know the work that you do and the active support you give to a lot of us in different ways. For others, what stands out in Ujwal's career of nearly 5 decades now is literally two worlds. One is your world as a banker, and in that banking also public sector, private sector, and multiple kind of four banks, international, national. Um, and from there, over the last 2 decades, working in the not-for-profit. So the CEO of two very reputed organizations, Pratham and Give India, and now on the board of several not-for-profits around the country that would include Educate Girls, Umeed, Nikar Ghat, Manzil Mistakes, and so on. So a lot of organizations. So looking forward to this rich conversation, Ujwal, because I just feel that I'm talking to someone who's got a vantage view. Like I almost feel like we're all in the forest or on the field, and you're also there, but also sitting and seeing across. So yeah, so excited about this, Ujwal, and let me begin with the first question we always
Thanks,
ask
Abhishek.
our yeah. So just beginning, Ujjwal, with the first question we always ask at the start of a wisdom talk. What is wisdom? And for you, I would locate that question into your experience of all these decades and having seen so much of life. What do you think, Ujjwal, is wisdom according to you?
Can I be honest? The question has taken me by surprise, but nevertheless,
Yes,
I've
please.
never paused to think about what is wisdom. That probably says something about me. But when I think about it, I think wisdom is being aware, it is being detached, it's being trusting, and it is being fair. I mean, these are four themes that I would think that would build wisdom. I mean, when I say being aware of yourself, being aware of the things around you, why you're reacting the way you're reacting, so on and so forth. Uh, and also aware about whoever you are communicating with. I mean, always it's a two-way or one-way broadcast, but you're always communicating. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
my mind that awareness is really key to breakthroughs, and therefore it is wisdom. If you
Hmm.
know who you're talking to, what they represent, if you know what you represent, then the likelihood of the communication being much stronger is very high.
Hmm.
Similarly, being detached, I mean, being aware and being detached are different. You have to step away from yourself and see whether your reactions are coming from a position of bias or they're really genuine reactions in the interest of fair play and wisdom. So
Hmm.
that is the tougher part. Being detached doesn't come simply to most people. It certainly doesn't come simply to me. I mean, I have to make that effort to detach myself from a position or a view or a thing. But whenever I've done that, I've realized it has helped the conversation and it has taken forward whatever agenda I had. Uh, Being trusting comes at the core of wisdom to me. I mean, one thing is being aware, the other thing is being detached. But unless you trust the counterparty that you're talking to, and the conversation is in a position of trust, not much is likely to happen. I mean, if you're all the time looking over your back whilst you're interacting or communicating with someone, uh, chances are that neither side is going to give the truth. And therefore, progress won't happen. And that's not wisdom. I mean, even if you're talking to an antagonist or an adversary, and it's a tough negotiation, but if you trust a few key principles that you have and say that I'll be honest. I know I have reservations on this person, but let me tell my story honestly, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, so be it. So you, rather than being smart, being trusting, uh, comes more naturally to me, and it also is more effective in my view. And the final part of wisdom is always being fair. I mean, in whatever you're doing, uh, is the fair action to myself? Is the action fair to the other person with whom? I mean, I'm thinking of any wisdom, this thing as an interaction between one and many, one and one, so on and so forth. Otherwise, where is the scope for wisdom? I mean, when you're thinking of yourself in reflection mode, yes, I mean, reflection is wisdom at another level. I don't know if that answers your question. But that's off the cuff answer on wisdom.
It definitely gets me started and gives birth to one more question, Ujwal, because you said something very interesting about detachment, and and you also said about awareness. So if I apply awareness to myself, I can see that in so many contexts, I am the hero of my own story, and the whole thing being about me. As founders, also, like, we founded 10 years ago. At that time, founders was celebrated even more. Like, everything was founder centric. And I'm curious, when you say detachment, uh, ego comes into question. I think for me, what comes up is like, to be detached really is hard, because there's so much passion, so much investment, and like my way, and it shows up in how we collaborate. Put a bit on this detachment piece. It's the first time somebody's brought up detachment in the context of wisdom.
In fact, it is more true for founders, for chief executives, who are full of themselves. I mean, for good or
Yeah.
bad. Why do you become a founder? Because you're passionate about an idea and you have the courage of your conviction to pursue that idea. Over time, what happens when the founder succeeds, especially, and even if he does it or she does it, uh, you tend to get full of yourself because you're all the time combatant. I mean, when an idea is a difficult idea and you have to push it through the environment, being stubborn sometimes is necessary. Being forceful is sometimes necessary. And when it works, every individual gets the idea that what I'm doing is the right thing. And over a period of time, and I've seen this especially in founders, they begin to believe that they're. I mean, I'm exaggerating for effect, but that that is the position that happens. And I've seen this time and again with very successful CEOs, with very successful founders, hubris sets. And therefore, the ability to stand aside from the view of the moment and reflect is what I call detachment. Whatever ideas you have been born out of your past experience. But that past experience is not necessarily the guide for your future actions or even the immediate interaction that you are having with someone. So standing aside and trying to weigh the pros and cons of what you're saying, not necessarily guided by your immediate experience, is what I call it. And to my mind, more important for founders, chief executives, because any number of times I've seen extremely successful CEOs being dismissed. Uh, in the corporate world, in the NGO world, it doesn't happen that often, but I've seen it happen there. And the only reason for that is everyone gets arrogant. Everyone gets arrogant with success, and because they stop reflecting. I mean, to an extent, detachment and reflection are very strongly correlated.
Hmm, 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 hmm.
So that's where the detachment
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
comes in.
So curious about your journey in terms of who grounded you, Ujwal? Was it your own reflection? Was it peers, mentors, your family? What was the source
So
of the grounding?
yeah, so I'm one of those guys who does stuff without thinking. At my core, that is who I am. I mean, an idea hits me, I just go after it. Yeah, I just seize the opportunity is a big part of my success. You wherever an opportunity. So you don't get time to think. You pursue an idea, and it has worked for me in the past. I can give you examples as we speak. But who are the people who have grounded me? One would be my wife. Uh, I mean, she's very balanced. She doesn't react. Every time I've reacted in haste, and if I've shown it to her, she only looks at me and doesn't say anything. But I instantly recognize that this hasn't found favor. And so one part is that at home. Then when I'm seeing really successful leaders, let's take a Mr. Wagul of ICICI Bank. He was the chairman of ICICI. One of the things I found was he was a very good listener. Lot of empathy, lot of this thing, and therefore gave advice going down to the level of the person that he is talking to. Uh, it could be a Bal Sakhi on a Pratham program from the community, or it could be a minister in the union government. Mr. Wagul's reactions would always be at the same level. I mean, the same dignity for the counterparty, the same interest, and the same quietness in the communication. I've seen this with Deepak Satwadekar. I've seen it with multiple other really successful people in the long run. So when you look at people like that, and I continue to interact with these people even today, and every time I'm in a board meeting with some of them or in another conversation, I just keep looking at them and saying, wow, why couldn't I be like them? So some of it then reflects in your actions over time. But I mean, if Mr. Wagul is 10, I'm 3. that, that's the extent. And I was 1. I have to say, I was 1 before I started interacting and thinking. See, in the corporate world, you don't really get the time to think. So much, I mean, of course, successful people do that and therefore they're successful. But the average person like me is very happy with the good things that are happening and wants to do more of those good things without really wanting to reflect and see ठीक है ठीक नहीं है. So I mean, I almost am convinced that I must have been an ADHD guy with so many things in my mind at all times, and the way I flipped from one idea to another. So being grounded is also being in the moment, being reflective and being silent at some level, which doesn't come easily, naturally, doesn't come naturally at all to me. But over the past few years, I've tried to get in it. That's why I said from 1 I've moved to 3, but I mean very far away from
In your sharing, Ujwal, it naturally meanders to this question of ordinariness. Because on one hand, you're rating yourself 3 on 10. You're also saying you're a person who goes after opportunities and has a long way to go. And yet, as someone who would look at your career, your journey, being at the helm of 2 very successful NGOs, and now through Ujwal Impact Ventures, you're impacting a much larger landscape. A part of me is like, how's this ordinary? Like, how's this? What do you mean by ordinary when you say ordinary? Because this doesn't seem to be ordinary, a corporate person coming and doing this. So, what do you mean when you say ordinary? So, I was curious about that. With a sense of disbelief, I must confess. Like, how is this ordinary?
Part of it is serendipity, but I'll talk about the ordinariness of my being. So, I was a bright student, but I never focused. Focus has been one of my biggest problems, that I've never focused, and therefore I barely passed my intermediate. I got 43% marks in my intermediate. science exam, which was a crucial exam for everyone when people wanted to go for engineering, this and the other. But I was just having fun in college. I was in college hostel, and through the year, distracted by all, there was always a community of people in a hostel who were having fun, and my thing was to be with them. I also like to be with the intelligent people, but 80%, 90% of my time was spent with the fun guys. And then in the last 15 days of the year, when first my college won't grant my terms because attendance would be low. But my sister was a topper in the college, so she would somehow go to the principal, convince him, and I would be allowed to appear for the exams.
Okay.
So in the last 15 days, then struggle, go to my intelligent friends, get their notes, do something, and scrape through. This through my academic career has been my story. Therefore, the ordinariness is well established. Now, why did success come? Uh, so let me talk about seizing the opportunity. Let me give you examples of how opportunities get seized. So I joined State Bank of India again on a whim, on an accident or whatever it was. It was a time I wanted to really appear for the IS, or I was appearing for the IS because that was a competitive exam. Again, no focus, no studies, doing multiple things, or doing my research. So ऐसे ही चल रहा था. So in those days when anyone was appearing for the IS, the backup was always appearing for the State Bank probationary exam. So I, like the others, applied and I forgot about the date of exam. And I got married. I got married extremely young, 23. My wife was my classmate. So when this happened, when the date of the exam came in, my wife was working in Pune. I was in Nagpur. She had come visiting. And I had completely forgotten about the exam itself. At 8:30 in the morning, few friends who were appearing for the exam came to pick me up.
Wow.
He said, "Arey, aaj exam hai." And I was suddenly awakened कि अभी exam जाना है. So desperate hunt for the admit card. I mean, in those days you didn't have identities like Aadhaar card or we are talking 1974. Luckily, I found the admit card and reached the venue 1 minute after.
Wow. Okay.
And then the guy took me in. And I was the only guy in the Nagpur center who cleared that exam, by the way.
Wow.
Because it was an objective, general knowledge, that kind of an example which didn't require me to be deeply studied or anything like that. So State Bank of India probationary officer happened like that. That completely accidentally, and a lot of good things have happened to me in my life. But going on with the story of State Bank of India, so I came in State Bank of India. I liked working in a bank, and those were the days of financial inclusion when small scale industries and small business were big things to do. I mean, this was post the nationalization of banks, and Indira Gandhi was really powerfully pushing for financial. And I identified with that cause, and I really went out of my way to help a lot of people and became a very successful small business, small scale manager, and therefore got noticed, got posted to the head office. In State Bank of India, you don't get promoted out of turn ever. I mean, you have to do your first 9 years before but you can get jobs which are exciting within that grade. And so those are the kind of promotions I got for pursuing passion and talking as equal to my boss. Whenever bosses came from VA, I would honestly present my thoughts, the audacious ones, to them. And they liked it because I was a kid. If I was a peer, they might have wanted to slap me. But I was the bachu and they were the big bosses. And I was very transparent in my passion about the whatever idea I projected. So that got me from Nagpur to Bombay, which was the local head office of State Bank of India. And when you're closer to powers, a lot more things open to you when you're at a remote center from the power. And that's learning for everyone who's on the program. That if you want to achieve, uh, grassroots work is outstanding and good. But essentially, the way we are designed, the way organizations are designed, actions happen from the center. So to be able to influence good work, to be able to influence, to do a lot of positive stuff, being associated with the center is important. Either you're directly there or you have very close bonds with, because it gives you chances to do. I mean, just to give you a couple of examples, I was in the small scale development department of State Bank of India in 1980 because of the good work I had done. And one of the things that time, one of the big things that we were pushing for was the defense authorities. You know, Defense Ministry had, they had 1 million workers. I mean, officers, jawans, So there was a lot of money floating in the defense system, which to a bank was very important. So defense was probably one of the top clients of State Bank of India, Ministry of Defense, Army, Air Force. We had 100 branches at least at army centers across the country. So one of the things was always strengthening the bond. So I said to them, look, so many people are retiring from defense every year. Why don't we create an entrepreneurship development program? Now, which is a different idea, novel idea. I mean, army officers or jawans, both. I said, let's make it for both. And let's do a combined program, which is disrupting what Fauj thinks. But can we do it? And I went to the local guy there is something called the Director General of Resettlement that the army has for people who are retiring and what to do with their future. And told him about this idea. He said, it's a great idea. And we'd like to do it, but I will need clearance for something like this from the Director General, who's a general. And in the first, the general is a really big thing. So he said, kaise jaye? Luckily for me, I had a general manager in State Bank of India, who Mr. Prem Prakash, God bless him. He was very happy to support youngsters. I mean, some of the things that I have picked up are from him. So when I went to him and said, this is it. He said, yeah, great idea. Then why don't you go to Delhi and talk to the general? Now, that was unheard of in State Bank of India कि एक छोटू जाएगा और जनरल के पास जाके ये करेगा. I actually went to the general to Delhi and pitched this idea, and he liked it, and we got a program going. So the thought is, if you have an audacious idea, don't be scared to voice the idea. Voice it with complete humility, but full audacity. I mean, audacity of the idea and humility of your action. I mean, those two are
beautiful.
Critically,
the audacity of the idea and the humility of your action.
Yeah. So when the two combine, you get receptivity on ideas. So I was able to do that. Let me give you another example also from the State Bank. It's again seizing the opportunity is one thing. The bank sent me on a 18-month bank management program, a full-time program at the National Institute of Bank Management. And so when I went there, 9 months out of that was for a dissertation work on which you're choosing a problem and solving a problem. So I had no clue about what to choose. Like I said, I'm not a man of depth. I'm a capricious man of new ideas. So in 1984, when I went to NIBN, by the time I was finishing my 9 months, it was early 1985. Equipment leasing was a new story in India. And completely new, nobody understood it. I said, why don't I study equipment leasing? And maybe the bank should create an equipment leasing subsidiary. Again, this is very audacious thinking for a 34-year-old guy in State Bank of India. I mean, you have to understand the hierarchies of State Bank of India.
I can imagine it must be like layers and layers of
layers and layers. There were 7 layers above.
And in a different era, I'm guessing, like
In a
I'm trying to imagine it must be a very sensitive to hierarchy
yeah.
era.
Even today, State Bank's not very different, but it was even worse in those days. So I chose equipment leasing. That time, the first equipment leasing company 20th century had set up, and first leasing company in Madras. These were both IIM Ahmedabad guys who had set this up. It was a very exciting idea. I mean, vaguely, without understanding anything about that, I said I'll. And I sort of started working on it, and was just having a ball. Because, as a 32, 33-year-old, one of my core ideas of choosing equipment leasing was I could do an All India survey as a part of the program. So to me, the attraction was, "Arey, ghumenge Delhi, Madras, Kolkata," and I was going around the country using my position extremely well. I would write to chief general managers of circles because I was attached to the central office of the bank on this program. I just used the power of the central office without anyone knowing. I was officially an intern there. I would write to the chief general managers that this is a new idea that the bank is exploring. Mr. Ujwal Thakar will come to your office. Can you take or can you send someone with him to meet the top clients of the bank? And in 85, State Bank was so powerful because they're credit scarce areas. I mean, anything above 5 crore rupees, you actually needed to go to Reserve Bank of India to get clearance. It wasn't where clients and banks were chasing clients. It was clients chasing banks. So with a letter like that, I actually got to meet the who's who of Indian. Completely at the top, this chotu guy would go and give gyan, take gyan. And at the end of 9 months, had some semblance of a report with me. I guess serendipity. State Bank of India got a new chairman. For the first time, State Bank of India got a chairman who was not a banker, who was an IS officer who had been posted there. D.N. Ghosh was the guy who would become chairman. And he wanted to establish himself in State Bank of India over all these hard-nosed bankers who were not too happy with an outsider having come. And he must have thought that, like me, कि कुछ नया करते हैं State Bank में.
Nice.
And so he said, equipment leasing, why don't we start? And which was really my way of thinking.
Right.
And so one fine day, I was having coffee at 2 o'clock after lunch below State Bank of India. Next to State Bank of India, there's the Shipping Corporation of India office. वहाँ coffee stall था, वहाँ जाके coffee पी. A peon comes to me and says, "Arey, chairman साहब ने बुलाया." I was not even 99.99%. I was 100% sure कि somebody is pulling my leg. कि ये बहुत बकबक करता है, इसका leg pull करो. So I told that peon, I said कि chairman साहब को बोलना रुकना, coffee पी रहे थे. No, because I didn't have any doubts. And then 10 minutes later, the general manager came, or 5 or 7, came running. Who the hell do you think you are? Keep in the chair, waiting. I said, "Oh shit, this is something serious." And then, but State Bank of India, even the general manager does not have the guts to ask question कि क्या चाहिए आपको. Chairman ने बुलाया तो जाओ. So I was walking to the lift with him. I asked him, "What is it about?" He says, "I have no clue." And I go to the chairman's office on the 18th floor, which is a fabulous place in State Bank of India. And the general manager walks me to the door, doesn't have the guts to peep in.
Oh.
And I go in again, where the chairman, managing director, and deputy managing director are waiting for me. And then I go there, and Mr. Ghosh says, "Young man, I hear you know something about leasing." And that's where seizing the opportunity. Quick flash through my mind was, "Hey guys, this is my opportunity of a lifetime. If I do something now, something will happen."
Mm, mm.
Any case, these guys don't know any better than what I do, which is why they've called. So, what is the most audacious plan that I can think of? This is
Wow,
all
nice.
flashing in the mind as I'm talking. And then I presented such an audacious plan to him. I said, Ki, yes, we must get in. 10,000 crores of lending is what equipment leasing is what we can do just with the government. If I just take the railway stock or defense personnel, these would be off balance sheet items. They would love it, everything. And he, being from the audit and accounts service, actually
Mm, mm.
understood numbers and understood this part of the public finance very well. And he loved that. And he said, so can you create SBI capital markets for us? So I
Wow.
said, yes, sir.
Nice, nice.
So that is how I actually created the blueprint for SBI capital markets. And the top management of the bank resented the chief general managers in the merchant banking division, the deputy managing directors, because who's this bacha suddenly chairman is talking to? And being the immature guy that I wasn't really nice with them in those days. I realized much later that being nice make things easier for you. But I was in my own world. कि अरे chairman साहब का आदमी हूँ मैं, तो ये करो. But so ideas like these happen. I mean, if you're audacious in action and you know a little bit of what you're talking, then it'll evolve, it'll develop.
Mm,
People will
mm.
come to your support. You will go and ask support.
Sure.
But the idea is think big.
Mm, mm.
Think big and don't be afraid to voice your big idea. Most times people are not voicing big ideas because they think कि हंसेगा. अरे हंसेगा तो उसके दांत दिखेंगे तुमको क्या प्रॉब्लम?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
No, that is really inspiring to, and quite an invitation for everybody to, including me, to voice big ideas. And I'm also hearing a lot of curiosity, Ujwal. Like, I mean, it is of course seizing the opportunity, but also seems like a basic curious mind that would want to go and explore and learn, and then not just learn and leave it academically, but build on top of it to manifest. I think that's what I'm seeing as a flow. But I'm also gathering that what you're saying about the ordinariness and extraordinariness is that extraordinary ideas, but ordinary me. I think that's the distinction I'm picking, that my ideas are big. I don't take on any of the extraordinariness. I put it into the idea and I stay who I am. I think that's...
Because I know I'm ordinary. When I do something extraordinary, I know I can mobilize people who are less ordinary than me or more extraordinary than me, and they will join. I mean, like was it Majru who said, मैं अकेला चल रहा था जनाबे मंजिल, लेकिन लोग जुड़ते रहे, कारवां बनता गया. That happened.
Yeah. I think there are several questions that are popping, and I'm just thinking I'll just pose them and maybe you can pick one and see where that goes. So I think one that was coming to me was around blind spots. Like when you said that, being that action happens at the center. And for me, when I look at my own journey, there has been a rebellious streak, which is like, away from the center and decentralized and, so, and only now as I'm coming to my 40s, I'm realizing what it has cost me and what it has cost what I could manifest, that distance from power. It's a blind spot for me and took me a while to kind of come to realize it. And I was curious that you, as a person who sits across boards and you've seen so many of these entrepreneurs, I'm sure questions about scale would come, large dreams. So one question that was coming to me was, what are blind spots that you're seeing across our generations as we go into the social space, as we venture? What are we not seeing, and what, say, someone like you as a board member would consistently want us to see? What are we ignoring? What are our blind spots?
One of the things I consistently see is that people are very passionate in your generation. People have the courage to pursue ideas. Unlike in my generation, when when I joined, for example, the State Bank of India, it was a batch of 300 people, and all of us wanted to become the chairman of State Bank of India. We couldn't think beyond that. Everyone said कि इतना अच्छा job मिल गया तो अगले 35 years we are here.
यही करेंगे.
Uh, Unlike that, your generation has so many opportunities, and therefore you guys have the courage to pursue ideas which are your dreams or whatever they are. That's the first difference between my generation and your generation. But the one thing I've consistently seen across so many founders is that if they reflected, their mission would be much clearer. I see a vagueness on the clarity of mission.
Clarity of vision.
Clarity of vision and mission, both.
Mission.
Both. I mean, I'm using the terms interchangeably. They are not. I know I am Bangalore guy, so you'll tell me ये vision अलग है. मैं कभी I am गया नहीं भैया. So I use these terms interchangeably. But of the 28 guys we are currently mentoring, we spent maximum time on getting clarity of vision and mission. Because once that is clear, then you know what to do. Otherwise, you're generally saying कि मेरे को बच्चे के लिए कुछ. अरे बच्चे के लिए तुम क्या कर रहे हो? What part of बच्चा's life are you? Education बच्चे का करना. But even within that, you really have to narrow down your focus. And the more you strip your mission and make it narrower and narrower, the more likely you're to succeed or to scale. That is my one learning which has come to me from people like Madhav Chauhan at Pratham or Venkat at Given. Nobody more than Venkat keeps stripping. I mean, he started off saying, I want to promote giving in India. Then he said, I want to promote individual giving in India. Then when things began to look good and we had those floods and we had tsunamis and money kept pouring in, he said, look, Ujwal, I'm not going to count this money. This is reactionary money. This is not people converted to giving individuals. This is spur of the moment empathy because they can see such disaster. Will these guys give next year on non-giving, on non-disaster causes? If they come in, then I'll go count them. So that is stripping the vision to say individual giving for a particular year.
Yeah.
So that then tremendously focuses you on what you want to do. And that is a learning process. It doesn't come naturally to anyone. Some people are more gifted than others. So they learn to do it naturally. Aditya Nataraj is the other guy who is continuously revisiting his mission and trying to narrow it down.
Yeah.
But there are also people who, like Madhav, for example, he might start with a narrow vision, or Atul Satija at another level, who are pursuing multiple ideas, but that capability not everyone has. For example, Atul Satija started as skilling, went into incubation, then went to an IS fellowship, now has gone to the BRAC program, which for poverty alleviation. Now today he's coming to the view that all that I do is livelihood, skilling, and poverty alleviation. So I will now divorce all these ideas. But in the 5 years of learning period, he was able to manage these multiple ideas. Not everyone has.
Sure.
The average entrepreneur doesn't. It is only the very extraordinary in all the entrepreneurs that I have seen, maybe 2 or 3 like Madhav or Atul, who can straddle different horses at the same time. But for the average entrepreneur, it's good to be narrower and narrower in your vision. Or broad in your vision, but narrower in what you do.
Yes. I think this is, and I'm going to just repeat this back so that I want to make sure I've understood it correctly, that the start is with an audacious idea.
Yeah.
And then it gets clearer and clearer as you strip it down and narrow it and sharpen it. And the sharper it becomes, the more potent it becomes in what it can accomplish.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if I'm hearing correctly, you're saying reality will start setting boundaries on the vision by itself, because I'm iterating and testing and grounding it,
Absolutely.
really making it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, and I think if I'm also then, if I can hypothesize with that clarity, then the idea can grow a lot.
Multifold. Yes. Yeah.
It's bounded. So it's almost like
It's a
large,
takeoff
audacious.
point.
Sorry?
I said it's a takeoff point. When the idea narrows and you know exactly what it is, then you're ready to take.
Yeah, it's almost seeming like a shape-wise, audacious idea gets clearer till it reaches a
Correct.
point, and then it
Yeah,
expands into something. And that's kind of to be seen
absolutely.
like the journey
Like
of the idea.
our hourglass thing, like
Yes, that's kind of the
yeah,
journey of the idea.
yeah.
That's such an interesting. Yeah, that's nice to know the process, because I think a lot of people start thinking scale at different points of the idea before narrowing and clearing it, and then have all these confusions. If I look at myself also, a lot of confusion about scale comes from trying to think of scale pre-clarity rather than post-clarity, and I
Correct,
think
correct.
that's what I'm picking. So that's a great blind spot to illuminate as well. Thanks for that. I think
Yeah.
that is uh, that is great to hear. Um, yeah. Any other blind spots that come to you, Ujwal, before we move to the next question? So one, definitely you said vision clarity is a blind spot.
Good listening skills is another important criteria for success. And if you look at any leader, whether in the corporate world or the NGO world, someone who listens attentively to his customer or to anyone he's listening is more likely to absorb and think and reflect and act, and therefore avoid a lot of mistakes. What tends to happen in the hurry-burry of doing business and the urgency of solving a problem is that you don't necessarily listen uh, to the people who you think are not listening worthy or not. I mean, it's not arrogance; it's just that taking them for granted. Uh, so that cultivate the habit of listening intently,
Listening
with full
with
focus
intent.
on what the guys are saying. Observe any successful big leader, you'll find is very good. Not
Sure.
necessarily a blind spot, but it's a habit
It's an important attribute
attribute. Yeah.
gathering. So, Ujjwal, maybe good time to zoom out at the sector level now, because
Yeah.
one is organizationally, but also sectorally, you must be seeing some deeper trends. And I was curious about if you wear the sector hat, so to speak, and from that vantage view, uh, what would you say as a sector where we could do more of, or we're doing really well? Like what's at a, and by I'm broadly defining the not-for-profit slash social entrepreneurship slash do good kind of space. Yeah.
One thing I'm sorely miss in the sector, and I mean, which is not to say it's there in the for-profit world, but collaboration is not happening. Everyone is pursuing their own idea, and everyone thinks they're the cat's whiskers. And which they are, probably, but they are not willing to talk as equals with other people in the same area who are solving the same problem. And if that happens, I think synergistically you'll arrive faster at the solution. And this is a sector-wide problem. One of the organizations I'm associated with is Sayo, which is just trying to build collaborations in the and last 2 years they've been at it. Very, very difficult they're finding. There are ego issues, there are lack of process issues, there are inability to understand each other's points of view. The hubris coming with confidence of having succeeded is all there. Uh, who will take the leadership of a collaborative is again the challenge.
Yes.
But
Yes.
if somebody could solve these at the sector level, uh, you will solve problems much.
Sure. Sure.
So,
The other question that I had, so thanks for that, Ujwal. I think that's a good point. Uh, Anything we're doing very well? Anything that you'd like to amplify and kind of say, okay, this is going right, just to balance the appreciative with the developmental.
lot of things are going right. I mean, as more younger people are getting into the development space and as social entrepreneurs, uh, so they have better perspectives on solving problems. For example, I mean, let me take specific case. Right, two of the organizations that I'm mentoring. One is Rocket Learning, another is MakerGuard. So Rocket Learning, the founders are all below 30 at business school. One went to IIM Ahmedabad and one went to Rajasthan on the tech side. And two of these have worked with Pratham for 3 years before they went to the business school. So they have understood the ground level realities and have current thinking on management practices and technology both. They are able to apply this far better than the homegrown entrepreneur. I have nothing against the homegrown entrepreneur, but what they will serve to do is when they succeed, people will want to copy. And so there's a lot of process coming in, a lot of planning, advanced thinking, use of technology, uh, the techniques of the business world that are important that are coming in. On the other hand, you have organizations like Prava and Commutin, which are very focused on scale with soul. So when you marry these two ideas, I mean, the planning of the rocket learnings and the soul of Prava is the ideal solution. But I think more and more people will begin to appreciate those solutions. One, in the olden days, people learned by trial and error. They made mistakes, learned, corrected. And that was obviously a better process, but a slower process. Now you have people who are learned when they come in and therefore will make less mistakes, will become the icons for the sector. And people will try and emulate. But equally, I mean, from the grassroots side, there are things to learn. I mean, there are organizations like Mandil Mystics, right? Purely homegrown, purely from the ground. If they can come up to the levels that they have, what have they done right? Is it their bonding with the community which has got them there? Is it pure passion? Is it their ability to learn from others? So there are learnings there from purely grassroots organizations and hybrid organizations as well. I mean, I'm calling the earlier rocket learning times as hybrids between the corporate world and the social world. So learnings are available on both sides. And
Nice.
yeah, so that.
Yeah, thanks. So, personal question, Ujwal, from my end that came up listening to your story. I have always held this question of specialist vis-a-vis generalist. So, I followed my curiosity a lot. I love being a generalist. And at the same time, I see that when younger people come to me and ask these questions, they are pulled towards hyper specialization as well. Because we live also in a world where I would rather go with a content expert rather than a content generalist. So it's almost like in my lived experience, there are two realities. One is my own curiosity, which takes me far and wide. And I do facilitation, I do some work, but there's the generalist. And when I hear you, I hear some threads of the generalist also. Curious how you looked at specialization and generalization, and what is one for one type of people, or should everybody do both? I'm just curious about how you think about this one.
One of my cardinal principles, because of my ordinariness, is that hire the best people. Hire people who understand the domains that they're responsible for. And then don't come in their way. Delegate, just keep some dashboard to monitor them. So, I mean, the answer to your question is a hybrid. I am the journalist there who will straddle multiple things. But the domain experts are critical to your success. I mean, Uh, unless you have that expertise, you as an organization or as an idea will not be able to grow. So
Sure.
marry the two, have journalists. I think the leader at the top being a journalist is important. Um, but you start as a specialist and become a journalist, even better, because then you have narrow domain expertise, you've
Yeah.
gone to the depth, you understood that, and now you're expanding. So ideally, to my
So
mind, a pure journalist से अच्छा specialist who's turned a generalist is a better leader
a
in the long
specialist
run.
who became a generalist.
Yeah, yeah. Again, your
Get
hourglass.
it.
पहले
Get it.
narrow करके
So
फिर बढ़े.
starting with that and then generalizing.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. We're seeing some hourglasses today.
Some of us were
I'm
lucky
sure
that
Ujjwal, you
we
spend
got away as
time.
journalists.
Yeah. Right. So
Yeah,
as we're
that was
coming
it.
towards yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
I
on,
was
go on.
saying, Ujjwal, as we're coming towards the close of this conversation, I was curious about your visions. I'm sure you think a lot about possibilities. You sound like a person with big, audacious ideas, possibilities. And just wondering if there are some slices of your vision of what should happen or what could happen that we as listeners could take back to mull over from your vantage view. What are these couple of things, your civil society vision or your a few wish list kind of things, saying it'd be great if this happens, this happens, this happens. Collaboration, we've already said one, so we've
Collaboration we've talked about.
yeah.
Active citizenry is something which is catching my attention. You know, whether it is elected representatives or I mean, if you're saying that the biggest potential of this country is because you're 28.4 years old and you have 500 million people in that age group. Now, if they're not active citizens or constitutional citizens or engaged citizens, uh, this dividend is going to become a disaster. So if there is one area I would focus on, it would be the youth of this country and making them active citizens. Now, how do you define active citizens? You will have different definition. Make it as broad as possible and let different people pick up narrow verticals within that. But to my mind, now the problems of education and health are not adequately addressed, but there are enough players in that space to where it is it's not on the back burner. I mean, these are, and increasingly it's becoming political issues also. I mean, the one biggest contribution author has made is bringing education to the forefront of a political thing. Similarly, I think over the next 5 years, rapidly health will also come into that. So those things will get attention.
Right.
What will not get immediate attention is youth or the development of youth. I mean, today youth is being recognized as because they're all voters. But how do we develop the youth of this country and have a holistic platform? So if I were to really think the biggest thing the ecosystem needs is an ecosystem for the youth in this country. And what does it take to build that? I mean, like Atul Satija came to the narrow focus of livelihoods India, which is really largely related to one part of youth activity. Uh, when you're talking livelihoods, you're talking age group 15 to 45. So he's picking up one narrow vertical, not so narrow vertical, but a vertical there. The Indian School of Democracy or Netri or organizations like that, looking at the electoral part of it. The Pravaz community is that building the Jagrik Nagrik. So there would be reap benefit, for example, creating active citizenry on. So what can we do as an ecosystem? What can Ujwal Impact Advisors, for example, do in that space? If I were to define. So after another 6 months, I think that's the direction I would push for within Ujwal Impact Advisors. Ecosystem play karna hai, so can we do it for youth?
Sure.
But these are evolving ideas. I mean,
Hmm, 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 hmm. Yeah, sounds like a delicious. Sounds like a. I can feel the energy of the possibility. I guess when what would
you're
happen if
in that
all this.
space. You're in that space, definitely.
Yes, and
So,
what would happen if all this would happen together? I think right now, even though we all know each other and we speak once in a while,
yeah,
how would it be to play even more actively together? Uh,
absolutely.
so that is amazing. Ujwal, how does somebody reach you if somebody is listening? Would an email be the best way? Would
Yeah,
Facebook
yeah,
be
yeah. Email, Facebook, phone,
okay? Multi-channel.
multi-channel. I mean, I'm not the most organized, so you might have
Yeah,
to remind me once or twice. But I'm not ignoring you because I want to ignore you. I'm just disorganized. That's why I'm ignoring
great. So anybody can reach out from
you.
any channel.
Anybody can reach to me on Messenger, on phone, on this thing. But I mean, just to give you an idea, there are 400 WhatsApp messages which I haven't had the time to look at. So, but eventually I will look and come back.
What's your hobby or pastime, Ujwal? What do you, what, it sounds like a occupied, busy life, buzzing with so much. What's your leisure time? What does that look like?
Playing bridge online or being on Facebook or chatting with people. Uh, Nothing fun.
Having fun, basically.
Having having fun. I think I'm born a much smaller, and
Hmm.
that continues to be my core.
And I think what I'm taking away is spend 90% of your time with the fun gang and then the rest 10% with the
Correct,
intelligence is
correct.
near the exam and you have the formula. It's neither
I
100% fun.
and be aware that you have to contribute something to society. तो अच्छे लोग काम जो अच्छा लोग कर रहे हैं उनके साथ एसोसिएट करके अपना दो लगाओ.
Bilkul. It's not a
Give your two bit.
self-indulgent fun, but a contributing uh,
Yeah.
frame of fun. Wow, that's a beautiful thought to pause this and just a lot of gratitude for people like you in a larger family. You know, just there's so much hope, guidance, inspiration that we all get from what you amplify, what you keep sharing. So just a lot of gratitude and thank you so much for sharing so generously.
Thank you guys for what you do. I mean, you're the guys who energize me all the time. By just your passion for doing what you guys do. Keep doing.
Thanks a lot, Ujwal. That
Thank
was
you.
lovely.
Take care.